Now let's talk about what's the state. So we did a lot of research on the state of connection. I want to unpack that for us. But first, it's really important to note the following, that connection is not static. You are either drawing closer or apart. There's no in between. So today, you're going to be having put forth some actions, one way or the other, that's going to help you draw closer to your team members, to your community members, to your family members, or you're going to have actions that are going to be pulling you apart. It's never static. There's no in between. The other important note that you and I have to make, this is really important, and it's going to be a dynamic shift for many of you, I imagine. Loneliness is not the absence of people, but rather it's the absence of connection. If you're in this room surrounded by all these wonderful people, you can still feel a sense of disconnection, of isolation, of loneliness, even though you're surrounded by people. Because what matters is the connection you feel between people. Similarly, if you're in a remote work situation in your remote office, if you have strong connections with your colleagues, you might not feel as isolated as that person in a crowded office space. So we have to get our hands around this. It's more complex than we might imagine. So on the same thread of this concept, I want to look at this very powerful quote by the late actor and comedian Robin Williams, who once stated the following. He said, "I used to think the worst thing in life was to end up all alone. It's not. The worst thing in life is to end up around people who make you feel all alone." So many of the clients that we work with around the world that are trying to create stronger teams and organizations think that the answer is just getting people together. And that can be a solution and part of a solution, but it's not about just getting people in the same room. It's about intentionally building the connection between one another. So on the heels of this powerful quote, I hope that all of us in this room can make the following commitment and make that this next statement true for all of us. That we never make someone feel alone, especially when you're with them, especially when they're on your team, especially as you're serving them as HR professionals inside your organization. All right, let me take another step back, and again, we're talking about the state of connection, and so I recently wrote a book all about this, and we did some incredible research, so I'm excited to share it with you. But let me give you a little context. So I spent over 12 years studying generational dynamics inside organizations, and I was writing a book about Gen Z, the youngest generation entering the workforce. And as I was writing that book, I ran into all this research that was highlighting how disconnected and isolated and lonely Gen Z is. And now, as of today, Gen Z is twice as likely to experience loneliness than our elderly population. We've never had that imbalance before. And so I was doing all this research, and I began studying how can we create more connection inside organizations, especially considering Gen Z is about to flood the workforce. And that was all pre-pandemic that we began this work. And so obviously the pandemic put fuel on our work and really accelerated what we were doing. And now, as of today, and after all the research, every generation, it's not just Gen Z, even though that was the genesis of our work, every generation is experiencing more disconnection than ever before. It's still most acute amongst Gen Z, unfortunately. But let me give you a little bit of more context here. So we spent over 5 years researching the topic of connection. We surveyed over 2,000 global workers, so I'm going to share that data with you here shortly. We worked with 50 leaders, interviewing them. What are you guys specifically doing to actually cultivate more connection inside your organization? And at this point, we've worked with hundreds of organizations, big and small, all over the world, in every industry, helping them create connectable cultures in order to ultimately to create stronger teams that leads to stronger performance and stronger organizations. So let me, again, share some of the research with you. So first, we found that 72% of global workers feel disconnected at least monthly, with 55% saying at least weekly. 69% of employees aren't satisfied with opportunities for connection inside their workplace. 79% of Gen Z report sometimes or always feeling lonely, which is the most of any generation. And then lastly, 3 in 5 employees say their leaders aren't doing a good job promoting or discussing connection. So you see the full story here, don't you? That we're more disconnected than ever. We're turning towards our places of work and our employers to actually satisfy this increased craving for connection, And then it turns out leaders and organizations are ill-equipped to actually deliver on that increased appetite for connection. So we've created quite an opportunity for us here. And the other thing that makes this topic rather slippery and even more complex is the following data point. You ready? 90% of employees suffering from isolation or disconnection say they would not tell their supervisor. So if you're in the room, if you're in the Coca-Cola music hall right now, and you're thinking to yourself, I don't know if this applies to me. While I see that it's important, I don't think it applies to my team or my organization because I've never heard anybody talk about this. That's because no one's talking about it. It's still shrouded in so much shame. So I would urge you, if you're thinking that way, to rethink that. And I want you to start from the assumption that everyone inside your organization is craving more connection. Because it's that important for our own personal well-being and for the success of our organization. So start with the assumption everyone's looking for more connection. Find ways to start creating more connection. So I find it ironic that when we're looking at all those data points, that the following statement, that we're not finding company at our company. This is where we spend most of our waking hours, and yet we're feeling so detached and disconnected. And so let's try to rewrite that script, and let's find ways to connect folks where they spend most of their waking hours, which of course is at work.